The views and opinions expressed on this program are those of the producers and the individuals appearing on this program and do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of the staff of the Sun Prairie Media Center, its members or underwriters, the board members of the Media Center Commission, Charter Communications, TDS Telecom, or the staff and elected officials of the City of Sun Prairie.
Hello and welcome to Real Reviews. My name is Jamison Rabbit, and the man seated next to me once crushed a cactus with his bare hand. His name is Mike Roth.
It's pretty easy to do.
Really?
No, it was painful. It was really painful. I bled for days. But you know what? It's in my Wikipedia page, so
You're
all
impressive.
worth it.
You're
all
very impressive.
Worth it.
All these things I've learned over the years.
Some of the things I do just for recognition, not because I actually enjoy it.
I like that. Well, Mike has taught us many things over 282 episodes. Learned so much. I don't even know where we're going to go.
I would assume next week what we're going to do is we're going to find some new movies.
Yeah?
We're going to review them.
Uh-huh.
There we go.
I can't wait.
And then we're going to do this again forever. How's that?
Forever and ever. We are chained to this desk. So, Mike, let's get us started off first with what we have for our streaming spotlight this week.
Well, for streaming spotlight this week, we finished the other 5 episodes of The Dark Crystal. In these episodes, like I said in prior, we had 3 different stories of our heroes going through the path, trying to get to a destination where they could tell people about how the Skeksis are pretty much enslaving us. The next 5 episodes is pretty much they are together, and now they are building a resistance for an army to go up against the Skeksis. There's some betrayal in one of the houses where sister becomes queen, and that's a whole story altogether. There's still a lot of depth, but unfortunately, I didn't get the same feelings with the last 5 episodes as I did with the first episodes. And also, I don't think this really is a spoiler alert, but something people should know, this is just a setup for another series.
Oh, of course.
This isn't really a prologue to the movie. This is a prologue to the next installment, which gives me some concern. Netflix cancels good shows every once in a while. These are very expensive. So if you're going to get into this expecting you are going to get the whole story of what's happening before the movie, you're not going to get that. You are probably setting yourself up to wait a whole year to find out what the next part is.
Oh, you'll be lucky if it's a year.
And the way they set this up, it doesn't feel like they really know how the entire story goes, which is another thing that concerns me. They give it a kind of a classic cliffhanger that didn't feel too necessary to the story, just necessary to justify another season. And that kind of worried me. I still enjoyed myself. And overall, putting both my scores together for this animated series, it's still a really fun and enjoyable series. But I now have concern, which I didn't have before.
So I have a couple things with this series. First off, I'm curious your opinion of this. Is this a family series?
Yeah, it is.
Think so?
It is dark, but just like The Dark Crystal was a family series,
Yeah, that movie creeped me out as a kid.
I don't think it's much darker than that. I think it's
I remember
more
people
in-depth.
dying in The Dark Crystal.
Yeah, everybody in the end. Right? The Skeksis and the
Yeah, there's the bad guys. They get their comeuppance.
well, you know, I mean, the movie, you had war. You knew that there was only going to be a couple of Gelflings left. There was an overtone of this was a dark, deadly world.
Right.
In this one, yeah, people die, but it's not like blood or... and the violence is the same. It's really bad puppet fighting.
Just stuffing flying everywhere.
Stuffing flying all.
So this... I had these thoughts. I didn't talk about it when we reviewed the first 5 episodes because I think we were just starting to get into the real thrust of the story. With the last 5 episodes, though, it is it feels like the story is very heavily borrowed from Lord of the Rings. We
Yeah.
are forming the Fellowship
Yeah.
in like episodes 6 and 7. We're going out.
This is a very epic-like
Yeah, it is very
fantasy.
epic. I mean, there's one point where the Skeksis are basically talking about, should we make orcs? Can we make
Yeah.
we make our own orcs? You know, there's a lot of that. I was like, wow, it is very heavy. We have to get Frodo to the mountain. I got you. You know, and it's a whole journey to save Thra.
Yeah.
And one of the things I did like about the last couple episodes was we started to see some familiar faces from the movie that really got some screen time and actually some character moments in there.
Yeah.
I kind of like that. I like that when they show up. And, you know, it's one of the things I think is the strong point of this. The soundtrack is beautiful.
Yeah.
I really like the soundtrack.
The puppetry is beautiful. The world is beautiful. All the things that I said when we first started the first 5 segments is absolutely true all the way through.
I think that this may have been better. This is a 10-episode series.
Yeah.
Between 45 and 50 minutes per episode.
Yeah.
I think this might have been better as an 8-episode series.
Oh, yeah.
It felt like I was fighting to keep interest there for a little while on a couple of these episodes.
Okay.
Episode
Did you find it
7,
later?
I believe it was.
Okay.
It felt like it was a lot of let's talk about what's going to happen in the next episode, you know?
Yeah.
It was a lot of that.
It felt like there was a lot of scenes that were fillers.
Yeah.
Like the Hunter all felt like filler.
Yep.
It was action and it was entertaining, but it didn't
But it
feel like it
didn't-
really add to the story.
It didn't drive the story at all.
No.
Yeah, and that's kind of my thing. You know, adding to the Lord of the Rings thing, we got spiders showing up.
True.
Like,
Yeah.
there's so
yeah.
much in it. In the darkening, I was like, wow, this really feels familiar. But I enjoy it.
Uh-huh.
I recommend the series,
Mm-hmm.
but kind of beware, as you've said, you know, that this doesn't necessarily wrap up like you
Yeah.
wanted to, and it does kind of feel a little extra long. You could have shaved 45 minutes out of this, and I would have been very happy.
Oh, I think they
At
could have
least.
shaved a lot more, and I felt like they should have wrapped it up.
Yeah.
They could have made a prequel that finished, and they could have expanded on that, or they could have done maybe something after what happens in the movie. But I think they're going for the cash grab.
This isn't
They're
a
going
quick
to,
production either, man.
No.
It takes a while to make these.
Yeah, and
So who knows when we're getting the next part?
and if the profits don't equal out to how much it's going
Or,
to be done.
you know, Disney Plus is about to change how streaming is done.
True.
So they may be halfway into production, and Netflix is like, we can't afford it anymore. Disney Plus just took all their content from us.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to pay us anymore. We'll see. What did you end up giving episodes 6 through 10 of The Dark Crystal?
I give it a 3, and it's more on the ending part and my concern that I won't see this story end. But you know,
Overall.
overall, it's still a very enjoyable series.
Yeah. I give it a 3.5. And I think that's what I gave the first half too. I think, you know, there's pluses and minuses, but I do recommend it. I think it's definitely worth checking out.
If I add both my scores and divide it, we have the same.
There we
score.
are.
There we are.
Found it. All right, let's take a look at what we have on the marquee this week, sir. And the first film I have for us is a film called Brittany Runs a Marathon from writer-director Paul Downs Colazo. Stars Jillian Bell as the title character, Brittany Forgler. Brittany has been kind of floating through life for a while, just kind of partying with her roommate. Happy to be the funny friend and just kind of hard partying and not really taking life seriously. You know, she judges people that she sees on the street constantly and is just constantly making comments about everyone. After a routine doctor visit scares her, she is kind of given the edict by the doctor to try and get healthy because there's a scare going on. And so to do so, she decides to start running, and she kind of has to face the fear of self-consciousness about her body because, as she refers to herself, she's the fat, funny friend, and she's very happy to be that way. And she faces all of the self-consciousness that goes along with going out there and running and being in public, exercising in a way that she knows she's probably going to fail at.
Yeah.
You know, if I can just run one block, I'll be happy. And as she runs, she starts to develop confidence. And she realizes that her roommate is the unhealthy one who always wants to, you know, like you're drinking on weeknights. Like maybe you have an issue. Maybe I'm not the less fun one now that I'm serious, you know, being a little more serious. And that maybe, you know, her roommate only sees her as the fat friend, you know. Maybe, and so it's kind of interesting, her dynamic. She gains this confidence in herself. She forms new friends. She forms this little running group with her neighbor, a lady named Catherine, played by Michaela Watkins, and a guy she meets on the street who is also in the same kind of track, trying to run to prove himself to his kids, played by Micah Stock. And they kind of are these running partners who push each other on this goal to run in the New York Marathon. That's their dream. And all three of them have very different reasons on why they're doing this and pushing each other. And she also, Brittany, starts this kind of really strange relationship along this time with a guy named Jern, played by Utkarsh Ambudkar, who is this consummate slacker who really intrigues her. They both are house sitting for some multimillionaire who's gone, and they're supposed to be watching his pets and watching the house.
2 people for that?
Well, one's a day shift, one's a night shift.
Oh, okay.
And then instead they just move in, basically.
Nice.
Get on each other's nerves, and then this kind of bond starts to form. But what's really interesting about this movie is, so it's based on a true story. Brittany's a real person.
Yeah.
Jillian Bell lost 40 pounds while making this movie.
I was going to ask you that.
Yeah,
if there
the
was a
transformation was real. She learned how to run, and she
Wow.
went out and did this. And so you see it in the movie, and I'm like, is it just, they just changing her clothing and doing, makeup? No, she was actually losing weight as she did the movie. And it's interesting, she finds herself kind of throwing herself into this new obsession now. Instead of partying and eating food, now she's running to the point of it being almost unhealthy for her. It's having adverse effects on her body because she has this obsession of like running too much, because she's starting to see confidence and people look at her differently, and she wants more of that. And and so it seems like it would just be, from the outset, it seemed like, well, when I saw the trailer, I thought this could be a funny movie. It's kind of silly.
Yeah.
And what I like is they didn't just make Brittany like, oh, she's a great person, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
She's still kind of not the greatest person a lot of times. She still has massive trust issues with people. She distrusts anyone who wants to be close to her. Her running partners, the guy that she starts a relationship with, she constantly pushes them away when they try and get too close. And she still has all the insecurities that came with, being the fat girl that everyone judged.
So it's a lot deeper movie.
It's a very emotional movie.
Wow.
I got done with this movie. I was kind of in a weird headspace about things because it really was an emotional movie.
I was not expecting that. You see the trailers and you see the same comedian, and she does this certain role all the time.
Yeah, I mean, I loved her on Workaholics. She,
Yeah.
she was great in that.
Yeah.
And I figured she's kind of going to be that same character.
Yeah.
Snarky girl.
Yeah.
She's way more than that. And I loved it.
That's great.
And you have a romance in here and a character that is, her identity and her romance isn't based entirely upon, who she's with. And it got me thinking, like, unlike Amy Schumer and her movies that we see, this didn't require somebody getting massive head trauma to realize that they have self-worth and to see themselves as beautiful. And
doesn't reveal it at the last 5 minutes.
she doesn't base her worth on who her romantic partner is.
That's very cool.
And it's just, I think it's a really great message, and it's a very honest film that I was totally not expecting to get. And so I really enjoy it.
I feel bad I didn't see it. I really do.
I went in like, this will be fun.
Yeah.
A lighthearted comedy, and I walk out of it like, wow, there's some things I got to sort out. So
that is really cool. That's cool.
Yeah, so Brittany Runs a Marathon. I gave it 4 stars. It's really worth checking out. So
Did
go find
you
it.
find after you watched it, maybe you would have raised or lowered your score because you were thinking about it more?
I mean, this is where I settled. It's hedged. It's like if I'm honest, like a 4 1/4. Yeah.
Very cool.
dig it.
Sometimes I go into a movie and it's like, oh, I need a day to think about
Yeah. Oh, I usually do because I've embarrassed myself with giving a score right away. A week later, like, what was I thinking?
Yeah.
Anyways, the next movie we have, though, is the big movie on the marquee this week. It is the sequel that we've been waiting for. It is It Chapter 2 from director Andy Muschietti. This is 27 years after the events of Chapter 1, which we got a couple years ago. Nearly everyone, all of the kids have grown up. They have left Derry and gone on with their lives, having no real memories of the events that happened in their childhood, some real tragedy that happened to them. The only one who remained, is Mike, played by Isaiah Mustafa. He has stayed in Derry. He remembers everything, and he has become almost obsessed with Pennywise, the events of it, what should happen if Pennywise returns, and it's a good thing he did because Pennywise returns and starts feasting on more children, and Mike begins to call everyone home. You got to come back to Derry. And we have a really interesting cast here of adult actors. Bill is played by James McAvoy. We have Beverly is Jessica Chastain in the older version. Richie is played by Bill Hader. Ben has grown up and gone from the fat kid to the big stud, Jay Ryan. And then Eddie is played by James Ransone. And it's an interesting cast. I think they did all right as far as pairing up children to adults for the most part. And as they return to Derry, memories and fears start to slowly return to them, and the realization that they have to face evil once again is kind of more than some of them can handle. And we get a lot of flashbacks to the younger cast together and separately as they understand the trauma that they suffered as kids. And Pennywise is doing his thing. Bill Skarsgård as Pennywise returns to be just pure out evil. Yeah.
That's what it is.
It is evil.
They could have called it Evil.
Oh,
but,
I think that would have been off-brand.
Yeah, they just wanted to call
That would
it.
have been confusing.
Yeah, that would have been.
So, It Chapter 1, you and I both really enjoyed.
Yeah.
I believe you gave it a 4-star review when we reviewed it a couple years ago.
Yeah.
It Chapter 2, we're excited for. What are your thoughts on this movie?
I was let down. A lot of things that I liked the first It. Not enough where I rewatched it, and I thought I would have.
Okay.
But I remembered the things that I didn't like about the movie was the massive amount of CG. But I love the kid's story. That's pretty much what drove the whole thing for me. Now we kind of take back, and all the kids' stories is done in flashbacks. In this case, when they had flashbacks from the adults to the kids, it felt like it only served a purpose to justify the career choices that they made. I didn't think that was really part of what should have been. I wanted more of the psychological horror that the novel gave, and in some cases the It series that we had back in the 80s or 90s.
80s, yeah.
They kind of took a lot of that out so they could put in more CG horror, which CG has its place, but in this point it made it feel very cartoony. There's a segment that they used in the previews where Beverly is sitting in her old home, and they played it over and over again in the theater, and it was a creepy scene in the theater when you watch it.
Until
and
you
the
got
big
the
reveal,
payoff.
the payoff is this big goofy cartoon
I would agree with that.
came bumbling out. This movie is almost 3 hours long, and instead of putting in more of what was a psychological horror that the original novel is, and I'm going to explain why I'm comparing it to the book instead of just as a movie alone. Instead of being a psychological horror, it was more of a summer blockbuster CG extravaganza. The reason why I compare it to the book, and usually I wouldn't do this, but in this movie 3 times they keep on mentioning, hey, the endings of your books are really bad to the author.
It's very meta to Stephen King.
And once you do that, once you call out on someone else like Clash of the Titans did, or most of Michael Bay's movies do, you set your bar higher for me, because now you have to beat something. And in this movie, I didn't think there was a payoff. Yeah, there was problems with Stephen King's writing, but you kept everything that everybody thought was bad, and then you added more bad story to it.
I thought it was funny. Those comments specifically, where they kept hammering home, like, James McAvoy is a writer. He's the pseudo Stephen King.
Yeah.
And like,
They even-
you're great, and then you can never end your books or your movies.
Yeah.
And that's always been an issue I've had with Stephen King as well. It's like,
Yeah.
great premise. Oh, it seems like he runs out of steam towards the end.
Yeah.
I also thought it was funny because I feel that same way about McAvoy's latest movie, Glass.
Okay.
Great movie.
Uh-huh.
Hated the end. So I was like, oh, yeah. Very meta. And of course, we get Stephen King in this movie, you know, showing up for a couple minutes.
Curious if he did it for the cash or...
He shows up in all of his movies. He shows up in a lot of his movies.
Yeah.
Yeah. He likes being an actor.
Was he in the last It?
Not in chapter 1, but I believe he was in the miniseries.
Oh, okay.
If I remember
okay.
right. I watched the miniseries before chapter 1.
Talking about the actors too, that was another weak point I had. James McAvoy, he's usually really great, but his accent twitched.
He was fighting
a
that
lot.
accent.
And I figured he must have just got off of Glass, and the great character he was in there, for some reason he couldn't let go, because I could pick up some of the accents as it shimmered back and forth during his acting scene.
I think for me, Bill Hader is the one who stood out to me, and I think everyone else was in his shadow. And you have James McAvoy and Jessica Chastain, who are great actors.
Yeah.
And Bill Hader, I wanted more of. Every time he showed up on screen, I thought he stood out. He brought some different elements that we didn't get in this movie, and I liked his dark comedy enough.
I agree with you. I think I usually don't like Bill Hader. This time, his comedy and his spirit was really good, but they directed him wrong. They added a little story to him, and some of the acting didn't portray exactly what they wanted us to feel, and I don't think they committed to his story enough or resolved it, and that was also a problem. Later on, Bill Hader, he has a lot of emotion. I'm not going to say why, but I thought at that point it was overreacting because I didn't get...
See, and I picked up on it very early on that's where the story was going. Yeah.
Because there was a scene where the kids, but I just assumed that was hate speech and not actual.
Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, I had kind of picked up on some telltale signs earlier in the movie.
Yeah.
That kind of led me to like, okay, so when are we going to get this
And I'm sorry to speak in code. It's
we have to. We have to. So I really I think the strength of this movie, I'm the opposite of you on one thing. I think the strength of this movie is bringing back the child actors and using them. I think if they hadn't been in here, the movie wouldn't have been as strong as I think it is. I like them. I like going back and finding the trauma that made them who they are and made them the men and women that they are now. And so I really enjoyed them in this. I agree. I think there were a couple of moments in here where the CG was kind of rough for me. But my biggest issue is the same thing as I had with the miniseries originally was I thought that the third act of that miniseries was just bad.
Yeah.
And I rewatched it, and it's just like, okay, I almost don't want to watch the end of it because it's bad. And this movie, like you're saying with the kind of the meta comments also, is this movie had the same issue. I thought that the end was just blah, and it didn't give me anything. There's a couple of moments. There's a moment where Bill Hader and Eddie, where they come to the three doors. Yeah. I thought that was fun.
That was funny.
My other big gripe is, I think one of the two creepiest moments in this movie, there's a moment under the bleachers that got me, and there's a moment that was in the trailers where McAvoy's character, Bill, is in the funhouse chasing after the little kid, and that's a really effective moment. And Pennywise is creepy. He's drooling over this kid.
Yeah.
And I wish I hadn't seen that scene 100 times before this, because it was all in the trailer.
Yeah.
And I think that was one of the more affecting moments for me, because both of those scenes, obviously, dealing with kids in trouble, that kind of got me. And I was like, I wish I hadn't seen that 1,000 times.
The problem I had with the kid in that particular scene, you see him 3 times. And every time you see him, the adults are verbally violent. The third time you see him, there's a situation where cops should have been combing the city. Oh, well,
it was a different time.
Who did it? It was a different time.
They got one cop in Derry.
But in this situation, every time they had an interaction with this kid, cops should be involved. And of course it isn't, but they didn't explain the backstory on how it actually poisons the town too. In this movie, they didn't do it, so it just feels out of place and weird that they could be very abusive to a strange child in public, and no one does anything about it.
Kids are kids. All right, we got to move on.
All right.
What did you end up giving it, Chapter 2?
I give it a 1.5. I was really disappointed.
So I agree kind of wholeheartedly on most of your points.
Okay.
But you can like a movie or not like a movie.
True.
It's totally fair. I like this movie. I think it's a full star less than the first movie. I gave Chapter 1 4.5 stars.
Okay.
This one I give 3.5. It's still enjoyable. It's better than the miniseries in my mind. I think the miniseries is rough. It does not age well.
No.
Outside of Tim Curry, the miniseries doesn't age well.
And the second part of that one, it was bad. And I wanted them to prove they had 3 hours to do it.
Yeah.
Some movies can make fantastic stuff in half the time, and we're going to talk about one of those
We're going to talk
real soon.
We're going to talk about it right now as we get into our Best in Show, our Best Picture winner. This week, what are we talking about, sir?
We are talking about Casablanca. It won an Oscar back in 1943. Of course, it's a 1942 movie. That's how these things work. We have one of Humphrey Bogart's and Ingrid Bergman's most celebrated movie. It's over 70 years old. This took place around World War II. During World War II, but we just got into it. And all these war movies are coming out in support. And this was one of the very few war movies that really didn't have much war about this. This is French-occupied Morocco. We have Humphrey Bogart. He plays Rick Blaine, and he is a cynic. But deep down, he is a little bit more than that, and Ingrid Bergman finds that about him. It's a story where every scene is extremely important.
Oh, yeah.
Things they don't dwell on much, and everything you need to see. They throw in so much corny stuff in this movie, but it's just enough to break it up and make it a little bit lighthearted, because this is an extremely deep movie where so much happens in just an hour and 40 minutes. It won an Oscar.
It won multiple
and
Oscars.
This one, well deserved. No one talks about some of these Oscar-nominated movies and things that go around 1942. It is old, but still people celebrate this thing, and it's totally worth it. The way they do the lighting.
The shadows are an entire character to themselves in this movie. And that I love it. I also... I mean, you have nice dark comedy in here. Claude Rains as Captain Renault has these great little throwaway, hilarious lines. One of my favorite, and this, I mean, one of the things I love about this movie is it's incredibly quotable.
Yeah.
You know, Claude Rains, in one moment, he's like, you know, he's talking about somebody gets shot. He's like, Major Strasser's been shot. Round up the usual suspects.
Yep.
You know, it's just.
And we use that all the time now.
There's so many lines that you know, and I jotted down a couple of them. I mean, most of these are Bogart lines that are, I mean, classics. Here's looking at you, kid. We'll always have Paris.
The quote everybody knows, "Play it again, Sam," which is
Nope,
never in the movie.
I think this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship of all the gin joints and all the towns in all the world. She walks into mine. I mean, these are classic lines, you know, and this is arguably one of the greatest movies ever made.
Yeah, it's. You have to watch it. If you have not watched it, don't just say, well, that's really old and corny, and all those movies back then are so shallow.
No,
this is
the
not.
best.
This is the best. I still get verklempt when I'm watching this because of the love story that's in it. It's just so fantastic. There's a love triangle where no one is really the bad guy, even though one person claims he's the bad guy. He is not the bad guy. It's so
and a love story that's
written.
amazing, considering that our two leads really hated each other on set.
Yeah,
that's pretty interesting.
That is pretty cool.
So this won Best Picture, Best Director, Best Screenplay. And it beat out, this was the last year that there were 10 movies nominated for Best Picture.
Oh, wow.
And so it beat out For Whom the Bell Tolls, Heaven Can Wait, The Human Comedy, In Which We Serve, Madame Curie, The More the Merrier, The Oxbow Incident, The Song of Bernadette, and Watch on the Rhine. This was also won the Academy Award for Best Picture. It was the first year that the Oscars were a public ceremony. Before that, they would basically just publish it in the paper, so-and-so won Best Picture.
Yeah.
This is the first year there was a public ceremony, and really led to what Hollywood has become. All because of Casablanca. That's the best.
Yeah.
Check it out.
Well, not all of Hollywood. It doesn't explain Michael Bay at all.
No. All right, quickly, let's take a look ahead at what is coming soon. The week of September 20th, we have 4 films we'll be talking about. Ad Astra is the new sci-fi film starring Brad Pitt and Tommy Lee Jones. I'm really looking forward to this.
Yeah.
I like that. We also have Downton Abbey, the movie. If you are a fan of the Downton Abbey series, the movie is coming out.
Never watched any of the episodes.
We also have Rambo, Last Blood, Stallone returns.
That's a surprise.
He's back. And our streaming spotlight on your Netflix, Between Two Ferns, the movie.
Looking forward to it.
I've heard great things about this. I'm really looking forward to that. Before we leave, we have to thank our sponsor, The Palace. Marcus Cinemas, thank you for sponsoring our program. We always appreciate it. We're going to go check out some of these films right in your theaters. I'm going tonight. As soon as we leave here, I'm ripping all this off. I'm going to the theater. Not nude, but I'm taking this off.
You are going to get our show canceled.
I don't want to get thrown out of there. Next week, we're going to be talking about films such as The Goldfinch, Hustlers, and we're going to be talking about the only X-rated movie to win Best Picture in our Best in Show series. Ooh. It's going to be exciting. We're talking X-rated movies, kids. Tune in for Real Reviews After Hours. But until that time, I'm Jamison.
I'm Mike Roth.
Thanks for watching.
Wow.